Ready when you are.
Are we on?
Give me a sec.
Okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee, and welcome to those who are watching online. Housekeeping. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices via the stairs, either through the security doors or opposite the lifts in the foyer. So that's there and there. Please do not use the lifts. Please assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise when it is deemed safe to return to the chamber. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? No. Thank you. I would, however, advise that speakers using the microphones are picked up by the cameras recording the meeting. Members of the public in the public gallery behind the speakers may be picked up by those cameras and have their image captured. Any member of the public who objects to the possibility of being filmed may wish to take this opportunity to move or leave the meeting. Would everyone present please ensure their mobile phones are turned to silent and that they are not used to make or receive phone calls or messages in the chamber whilst this meeting is in progress. I have the following members who wish to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. Item AO1, Councillor Britcher. Item AO2, Councillor Austin. Item AO3, Councillor Kay Bright. Would any other members who wish to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1 please announce it now? Thank you. The following applications have been reserved for public speaking. Item 4A, land adjacent to Salmerston Grange, Nash Road, Margate. Item 4B, 12 Queen Street, Ramsgate. And item 4C, 26 Ramsgate Road, Broadstairs. I have apologies from Councillor Driver, substituted by Councillor Huxley. And I have apologies from Councillor Moore. Do I have any other apologies or substitutions? Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. Do members agree that the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 17th of January 2024 be approved as a correct record? And do I have a proposer of that, please? Proposer, Councillor Alban, and seconded by Councillor Matterface. Do members agree? Thank you. The Planning Applications Manager will now give an update regarding the application for Domus, North Foreland Avenue, Broadstairs, following the site visit that took place on the 2nd of February.
Thank you, Chair. I've informed members of this already, but just so that it's as a matter of record. Further to the site visit at Domus, North Foreland Avenue, on the 2nd of February, officers contacted the applicant in regard to discrepancies observed on site between the proposed rear elevation plans and the development as built. We've been informed that the development as built at the second floor rear balcony is proposed. However, this does not match the proposed plans which have been consulted upon, and therefore we've taken the decision to delay reporting it back to members for decision for the receipt of the updated plan and for a short consultation period for neighbours to comment on the change to occur. The item would then be reported back to members for decision. Just in addition, on agenda item 4A, there are a few changes to conditions that the officer recommendation will include. I'm not going to go through them in detail now because I'll do that in the presentation so that you can see it in the context of what we're talking about, but just to give you an outline of which conditions I'm referring to, they will be condition 6, which is relating to cycle parking, condition 9 with regards to the play space and when the trigger for the play space is, condition 11, which is for the provision of drop-off bays and again when those are triggered, and also additional wording in condition 14, and we'll talk about that in due course.
Thank you. Any site visits will take place for committee members on the morning of Friday the 1st of March. And so we move on to public speaking, agenda item 4A, land adjacent to Salmerston Grange, Nash Road, Margate. Is Mr. Charles Collins here? Yeah, okay. So I know he's on his way, but so you're standing in for him. Thank you. And I'll just say you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Lady Chairperson and committee members. My name is Dan Merriman. I'm the Land Director at Bellway Homes. To assist the committee this evening, Bellway has supplied a planning committee brief which includes a summary of the development proposal, including visuals, a letter from Savills and a letter from our solicitors, DAC Beechcroft. I'll refer to these shortly. Following over 12 months working with your officers, Bellway fully endorses the comprehensive officers' report and recommendation for approval. It is important to emphasise what the committee is deciding this evening, as the site benefits already from an outline planning permission granted in 2022. The principle of the development and the necessary Section 106 obligations and contributions have already been secured. Some of these key benefits include securing necessary social housing, including 45 affordable housing units. Bellway is seeking to work with Thanet as the provider of the rented units, including dialogue with both Bob Porter and Ashley Jackson. A section delivered of the much-needed Nash Road realignment, 12 new school drop-off pick-up bays to serve St Gregory's Primary School, financial contributions towards secondary education, libraries and youth services, additional public open space and new play area. So turning to the Planning Committee brief, to assist you with determining the matters of layout, scale, appearance and landscaping, please note that the site layout incorporates this new link road, tree-lined streets, ample garden amenity space and a large community park. The architecture is a contemporary take on a traditional design approach, taking reference from a local materials palette, predominantly of two-storey family housing. A fabric-first approach with all homes having access to electric vehicle charging. The letters from Savills and our solicitors DAC should assist. The officer's report under other matters summarises the situation with respect to St Gregory's School. To note, there are limits to what reserve matters can and cannot do. Through the siting of the required drop-off and pick-up bays and pedestrian pathways to Manston Road, the proposal does what the planning permission requires. A planning condition specifies the detail of any gate into the school. This could be provided dependent on the school's operational requirements. The internal configuration of the school is not a matter for determination this evening. The proposal of the off-site highway works in Shottendane and Manston Road meet all the highway requirements and is agreed with Kent County Council following the rigorous road and road safety audit process. It does not impinge on the existing school access. In short, the reserve matters do not preclude or prejudice any further alterations or improvements to the school. Indeed, they provide a benefit. The 12 new bays are less than 5 minutes walk away from the school entrance. In February 2022, KCC chose not to seek a primary school education. The OPP has already determined this. Other issues raised by third parties, including the school, are immaterial to this reserve matters application. There is every reason, therefore, to allow and follow your officer's recommendation and grant reserve matters approval this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Speaking against the application, I have Mr. Rowan Dickman. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair and members. I'm opposing the planning application in 2 key areas. Firstly, highways. I do not believe that the full complexity of Manston Road and the traffic movement within it has been fully understood by KCC or TDC. Originally, observations were carried out at St Gregory's School during peak times. However, within the road we have the crematorium, the cemetery and of course the Thanet refuse site. Now at present the refuse site is running an appointment scheme which has alleviated the traffic movement within the road. However, I have a concern that as the population increases exponentially, that they may have to revert back to the original system of first come first serve, and those of you that know Manston Road know that that caused quite heavy congestion. Most importantly, my main concern is that Manston Road is actually a main arterial highway on and off the island. You only have to see it at the moment with Birchington shut down. The queues going down Manston Road have been there most days. Now I'm aware that a ring road is being put in, but I think this will exacerbate matters even further. Now please bear with me because most ring roads tend to go round a conurbation and not through it, so I may have this wrong, but if I'm correct, the road will make its way through Hartsdown Road down to the just in front of the football ground. It's going to be fun on match days, isn't it? But there you go. Through the estate situated to the right, which is North Field to Shottendane Road, which is where the cricket club is. It will make its way, the ring road, it will make its way through the estate to Shottendane Road, where it will meet another roundabout. It will then make its way over that, up the field, to Manston Road, where it meet the roundabout virtually, not quite, but virtually opposite the tip, and then left about 200 metres to another roundabout that will take it through the estate that we're talking about the applications for. Now, if I'm correct, I have a vision of a perfect storm. Holiday traffic avoiding Canterbury Road, which is now increased in traffic because Manston Road's been shut off, trying to find a way through. General traffic flow used in the ring road, good percentage of which is commercial traffic. Funeral traffic going to and from the sites. And then summer traffic makes a big difference. And then during the winter months, traffic going to and from Westwood, which they do in any case to avoid Hayne Road, and then meeting up with the football ground. So taking that all into consideration, I do think there's a possibility of a perfect storm, unless we really look at this carefully. Secondly, I'm opposing this planned application on potential flooding. Now, the Grange Field is at the top of a hill which basically runs down to the lower field north of Shottendane, where the brook runs through. And I'll come to Tivoli Brook in a moment.
Excuse me, the 3 minutes are up. Could you try and wind up, please?
Are they up already?
Yeah.
Sorry. So basically, I am concerned that 250 houses there, flooding water down to the bungalows directly below it, and indeed the substation, and also connected to the other 450 houses going down, will channel water down into where the brook runs. Now, I am concerned that although mitigation is going in, that will cause flooding down there and possibly could affect the main sands as well. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. I next have speaking against Mr. Sean McGrath. You've got 3 minutes. Yeah, you can have 3 minutes between you.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak this evening on such an important issue for the school. My name is David Walker. I'm the head teacher at St Gregory's Catholic Primary School. We have almost 300 pupils on roll, aged between 4 and 11 years old, and I'm concerned this planning application has a hugely negative impact upon the safety of children at the school. As I understand it, the proposed works mean that parents will no longer be able to park near the entrance to the school. Instead have to park on the opposite side of our fields inside the new housing development. No entrance pathways are planned to support children's access into the school. How will children get into the school safely? They cannot walk across a field each day. Be wet, slippery, dark in many cases when children finish their after-school clubs and have to go home. The school then needs to pay for pathways that lead to the school office, for fencing to separate these pathways from the rest of the school and to keep children safe, and for lighting. These are just the basics needed to keep children safe. It's been suggested that there could be a drop-off zone at one side of the school in the new development, but the actual school entrance on the opposite side, where it is now, next to the new road, where families need to walk almost 600 metres each day from one to the other. This is most concerning. Our proportion of special needs children is almost double the national average. Some of these have quite extreme needs, and their parents pass as close to the school as possible to keep them safe from cars and roads. In addition, how are disabled parents going to access the school? How will they get the children into school if they can't park near the school entrance? Again, this isn't safe. New houses are important, access links are important, and progress is also important, but none of these are as important as children's safety, and that's my concern. I'm going to pass you over to Sean McGrath, our planning consultant, who can explain further.
Thank you, Chair, Councillors. Condition 16 of the outline consent requires details of access into the school to be agreed at this reserved matter stage. It has not been. Burway have provided details up to the school, but not into it. This is because nobody has engaged seriously with the school since 2017. The impact of the school has been overlooked. This is why we are here tonight asking for your help. The only way this matter will be resolved is through dialogue. And the only way this will happen is if you defer making a decision on this application tonight until these issues are sorted out. I'm not asking you to refuse the application, simply to defer making a positive decision until the safety and safeguarding of children has been resolved with the input of the school. I do hope that you will support the school tonight and make sure that in the future children can access the school safely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Councillor Britcher, under section 20.1, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. I will also be particularly discussing concerns around road safety for children. So the current access to the school is by what is already a very busy road, and changes to the road layout which are being proposed are going to be increasing the potential risk to children, but also parents and staff reaching the entrance to the school. As been said, students at the school are aged between 4 and 11, and obviously now small children, the younger side of that, and there's likely to be even younger children present at drop-off and pick-up times with their younger sibling students. So the current proposal is for a small number of parking spaces for dropping off children, which will be in the development, but it is actually quite a long walk, particularly for those younger children, from those spaces to the current school entrance, and that's especially going to be the case in bad weather, obviously quite rainy today, and for children and parents who are disabled. So the current planning document, and it seems to vary across it whether it's offering 10 spaces or 12 spaces, but these are going to be below what's necessary, especially as the school is a Catholic school, so there's more children who are going to be travelling in from further afield compared to other similar primary schools in the area. So obviously you've got a greater proportion of students will be coming in by car. I mean, it is welcome that there is some proposal to have a level of new entrants, but the school will need some additional support because they are going to need to shift around the layout of the site to ensure the new entrants can be overseen by reception for the purposes of safeguarding students. There's also the fact that the proposed development has a lot of family homes, so you're likely to have a lot of new residents who have primary school aged children who may be attending the school. Now this quite likely to increase congestion during the school run, make it even more important to have those safer, improved entrants to the school site. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now hand over to the Planning Applications Manager to give us our updates and outline the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll give the updates to the conditions as we go through, I think, and then summarise them at the end as well. So the application in front of members is for reserved matters for the approval of the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale for the 250 dwelling scheme on the land adjacent to Salmston Grange. So the matters under consideration by members relate to those reserved matters details only. So matters of access were approved at outline, just to be very clear on that point. So this is the red line plan that was in the outline application, just showing the details of where the site is. Members will likely be familiar with where we are, but I'll just give you some reference points so you're aware. So we have Manston Road and the junction with Shottendane Road in the area here. The site is the field that you can see there between St Gregory's Primary School and the crematorium and the allotments. You have Nash Road that's running along the top of the image, and Coffin House Corner, which is at the very top of the image here. So to put this in context of the local plan, so members will be even more familiar with the Shottendane Road site, which is another allocated housing site, which has got outline approval via the public inquiry. The site itself is here, and it's covered by HO3, so it's an allocated housing site, and it includes the road link through, which is covered under SP47, which is the Strategic Routes Policy, which is providing routing to try and avoid more traffic going through Coffin House Corner primarily. You can see some of the other designations around there, but it is within the urban confines, and as mentioned, the principle and the outline has already been approved. So to give you an update or a reminder about the outline application, so this was the indicative layout provided for the outline application. So the application in question was originally reported to members of the Planning Committee in August 2017, and at that point it was resolved to grant approval for the matters of access and the up to 250 dwellings with, at that point, 30% affordable housing and a number of contributions. We had a viability, so that was deferred for approval on that basis. We then had a viability assessment that was submitted in May 2018. Subsequent discussions went on in terms of that viability assessment, and it was subsequently reported back to members in August 2020, and then subsequently in November 2020, where some of you may recall the application being discussed, and subsequently agreement was given to new heads of terms, which included 18% affordable housing on the site, with other contributions as well, and that was subsequently approved after the legal agreement came in February 2022. So that stemmed from the viability constraints of providing the road through the site with the number of dwellings that were being provided. So in terms of the approval at outline, as I mentioned, it includes the matters of access, and that includes the highways works within the red line of the site, specifically some of them are shown here. So on the left-hand side of that image, you have a new roundabout on Manston Road. So this is proposed with a road that runs along the existing alignment of Manston Road to ensure that all the properties along that have vehicular accesses will have access onto a side road. You then have the roundabout, which is then accessing into the site. If you look at the image on the bottom, you can then see the matters of access at the other end of the site, to the east of the site, where you have basically Nash Road loops round now into the site, and the actual part of Nash Road that runs down to Empire Terrace will have to be a turning off. So the reason behind that is that what the other off-site highways works that are required to occur in agreement prior to occupation and development on the site, depending on phasing, is the closure of one arm of Coffin House Corner. So Nash Road will be closed off at Coffin House Corner, and therefore Empire Terrace will loop round into Nash Road without having an access. So again, the idea here is to try and relieve congestion at this junction specifically. It's obviously a 5-arm junction at the moment, so it's got 5 separate signal segments. So the aim here is to then direct traffic that's not turning left to go down Nash Road, but if it's coming from Victoria traffic lights, it's coming down Manston Road to the new roundabout if it's then going off towards Westwood Cross. So then the other change that occurs as part of that, which relates to some of the issues that have already been mentioned, are at the Shottendane Road, Manston Road junction. Currently, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with this, at the moment the Shottendane Road is the road that runs to Coffin House Corner, and Manston Road has to turn onto Shottendane Road and the other way around if you're going from Coffin House Corner to the south. What will change is that Manston Road will become the road that primarily runs to Coffin House Corner, with traffic from Shottendane Road turning onto that route. So as part of the works that are required to occur from the outline permission, it's included the removal of parking bays which are currently situated along here, which again, for anyone that's driven around here will know where they are and have experienced the parking that occurs there. That's obviously because this is where the school entrance is. So this is the pedestrian and vehicular entrance. It's one of the entrances to the site. So this entrance isn't changing as part of the highways works that was put forward here, other than at the time a slight change to increase a visibility splay with the highways works. So these are the works that are obligated to occur prior to development occurring or in agreements with a timescale. These works are not under consideration within this reserve matters application. They have already gone through a separate process with highways. They have to get consent under a 278 agreement, and they're not subject to consideration this evening. However, what we do have to consider are those matters of reserve matters, which include the layout within the site layout that you can see, as well as looking at issues to do with appearance, scale, and landscaping. So in terms of the layout of the actual proposal, so we've got 250 dwellings in total, 222 houses. The split of the houses is 111 three-bed houses, 29 two-bed houses, 82 four-bed houses, and 28 flats, of which 12 are one-bed and 16 are two-bed. So you have the main local distributor road running through the site. So as per the indicative layout that was looked at outline, the open space is in the same place as in the outline as well. So looking on the western half of the site, so this is Manston Road and the site is on the right here. So again, just a reminder here, the roundabout is coming onto the site itself. So this is one of the temporary access that's been created, but this is a view onto the site at the moment. And then this is a view, so this is a view looking at the boundary with the Thanet crematorium. So the tree boundary there is outside of the site in question. So again, a reminder of what's been approved at outline. So this is the roundabout that's already been approved. But looking at what's been done around that roundabout, in terms of we're just going to move through the site to look at the layout in a bit more detail. So on the northern part of the new link road, you have a flat block on the corner fronting Manston Road. You've then got terraces that are wrapping around the corner, and then you've got one road that comes into the north, and we're going to look at this area in more detail in a bit in terms of potential pedestrian access and a drop-off area for the school. To the south here, you've got an inner block-paved secondary road which comes in at this point here and then wraps around. You've then got a small number of direct accesses onto the local distributor road, where you've got a road behind a road in certain instances. You can see that with the actual road itself, the spine road, you have a grass verge, and then you've got a 3 metre wide cycle footway on either side of the spine road running along, with tree planting included as well. So I'm just going to look at the south of the site now to just show you this section here in a bit more detail. So we've got the allotments to the south of the image. So you've got another access point that comes in that wraps around to the secondary roads. So you've got a cul-de-sac development. Again, all of the roads, the main road has got frontage to it with pedestrian entrances, but there is parking around the back in certain instances to try and minimise the number of direct accesses off the spine road. You can see how you've got an entrance point here and also here, where you've got two roads, so running parallel to the spine road. So we're just going to look at the area to the west in a bit more detail, just where Nash Road is being altered to wrap into the site in terms of the landscaping that's added in this area here. So just again, another reminder of what's been approved already through the outline. So this top image shows how the road wraps around. This is where there is a bridge over the former and now disused railway line, which is a pedestrian link. And this is just an image with that next to it. This is from Google, just looking down that current stretch. So the reason this image is included is just to show that this is the section of Nash Road that will wrap round to the left and go onto the site as it's shown on that image. So the area here will be replaced by landscaping. So this is the area replaced by landscaping here. Just to give you an idea of what that looks like in terms of the relationship with the relatively newly built dwellings that are actually adjacent to that. At the moment, the road distance, so the road is located directly adjacent to the close bordered fence of the neighbours on that top section. And then on the bottom section, what happens is the road is taken away from that boundary with additional planting put in there. There's also a substation to support the housing development, which has been located here. This is a view looking back towards that junction. So the site is on the right now, and again, you may be familiar with, there's an entrance point here which goes on to the disused railway site where you've got development that runs north to south. So in terms of looking at the layout at that point, so that was looking back this way from this entrance. So you've got frontage development, which would actually occur on Nash Road here, on the existing Nash Road as well. And then looking at the rest of this northern half of the site, you have another road that wraps in. So this is a road junction here off the local distributor road, which runs in and runs around to access a number of dwellings fronting the open space to be provided. So it wraps all the way around to this point here. What you also have is a route that's been created through the site, which is a footpath that runs along this way to where the play area is to be provided. This is particularly relevant when, I'll come back to that image in a second, when looking at this diagram. So this is showing the Toucan crossing to be provided on the local distributor road. So that provides for pedestrian and cycle crossing points. You've also got 2 new bus stops, which are located, one in this area here and one in this area here. So as part of the outline application, there was some funding that's provided for the bus stops as part of that. There is a condition which has been put on specifically requiring an additional safety audit to be carried out with regards to this crossing. Originally, the safety audit that was submitted that was looked at by Highways was on the basis of a previous iteration of the crossing, and that we just need to check with regards to the position of the bus stops, whether or not they need to be slightly moved or not, but that's a condition on the permission. I just do want to go back, though, to this image here. So this is looking from Nash Road. The site is on your right. These are the dwellings at the moment that look over the field. So those are these dwellings up here. So these dwellings will still be looking out over the open space here. So there's no dwellings that are in front of those dwellings on Nash Road. So this is a excuse me, this is a hard surface plan, just showing, again, just to give a bit of clarity on where those road entrances are coming in. You can see where the different surface material is being proposed for the driveways that come off the main distributor road, but also you can then see the secondary spokes coming off the main road itself. So, looking at the parking across the site, so I appreciate this is a slightly confusing image, but we'll quickly go through in segments the site. So every dwelling has an allocated parking space, at least one. The majority of dwellings have 2 spaces provided, and it's all dependent on the size of the dwelling, so all 3-bed and up, and most 2-beds have 2 spaces allocated. There are also, and these are in the dark blue rather than the light blue are the allocated or the off-street spaces. The dark blue are garages. Now they haven't been considered, there are 93 of them, they haven't been considered as parking provision by Highways because I think, as most people agree, garages are often not actually used to park vehicles, but they are shown on this plan for reference. So in terms of a point to raise here is that there are 105 visitor parking spaces throughout the development. So originally there were a lot less parking spaces provided for visitors in the development, but through amendments to the scheme, the applicant has provided additional parking throughout the site. You can see, as we're in the western part of the site here, how they've been provided. Often they're provided via lay-by parking, so rather than so as well as having the lay-by parking, there is parking that is available on the street in certain instances, but often these are to try and take them off the road and not actually cause any disruption to the free flow of traffic within all of these streets. It's also proposed to have electric vehicle charging points on all of the dwellings. There is a condition which requires details of the specifications of those charging points, but they are required to be provided as part of the development. So this is just a view in the middle of the site where you can see the drop-off bay, the driveways and the actual lay-by parking, which is in yellow, and you can see the light blue spaces indicate the off-street parking that's provided. And again, you can see that there are a number of bay parking areas at the front of the site there. Again, this is because there is no parking on the local distributor road, because it's it's going to be part of the Thanet Road network. So in terms of the the matters that have been raised with regards to the pedestrian footpath. So this has been looked at in terms of the link to the school in a lot of detail in the report. So page 41 of the committee report talks about this extensively. So originally it was proposed in the application, the outline in 2016 by the then applicant, following discussions between KCC Highways Education and the school to look to provide a pedestrian access at this point on the site with a gate, or the ability to have a gate at that point, sorry, this point here, where the annotation is. And that's why condition 16 on that outline application required the RM to include details of the pedestrian access. So the plans are required to show the footpath, and this is where the footpath access was shown on the indicative plans of the outline. So this was to safeguard in the future development of the site, that condition, potential alternative access for pedestrians to get to the school. But crucially, there's no requirement for the school to provide an access at this point. So they're not required to put a gate into their fence, because it's their fence. It was to future-proof if that came forward. And in subsequent discussions, it appears to be that this is not necessarily wanted, certainly not in the form that's been put forward. It's not a requirement of the outline to go beyond the remit of the red line. A really important point. There's no obligation in the outline to provide works on the school site to facilitate an access at this point either, and that would be unreasonable for any reserved matters to require that to happen. So what has then been looked at is to ensure that when it comes to the drop-off area, which is shown here, these parking spaces, these 12 parking spaces, which have been shown in the same location again, excuse me, as on the outline, on the indicative plan, is to ensure that there is a safe pedestrian route from that drop-off to the northwest corner of the site, where you are then on Manston Road and able to walk down Manston Road to the current and the entrance, which again isn't affected by the development on that pedestrian and vehicular access, which is the current entrance to the school. So what's happened in this area here is that there's a 2.5 metre wide footpath that's been provided. This layout has changed from the original proposal that was put forward as part of the reserve matters to minimise the number of drop curbs and vehicular accesses that are provided. You've also got this route through the site here, and we'll look at the elevations of this flat building as well. Crucially, this area has been looked at by KCC Highways as well as the route through the site. They did require amendments to the route for pedestrians to ensure there was safe pedestrian access, and they have stated that there is no safety concerns with regards to this route. There is no evidential concerns provided that this route is in any way unsafe. And therefore it's considered that this is an appropriate layout within the red line of the site to be provided. So what, in terms of the gate, is put forward as a potential, if a gate were wanted at this point in the future, there is a condition which is proposed to be put on, which outlines, which is condition 14. I'll just find it now. There we go. Which is that in case there are in case it's wished to have an entrance at this point, it basically requires that details of any footpath and any gate to the school boundary would be submitted prior to the occupation of any dwelling on Street 2, which is this street here. And if there was a footpath or any gate provided, that has to then be provided as part of the development. The idea being that if it's wanted, then it's obligated to be provided, but it's only about what's on the actual site itself. It cannot be required that the school put in a gate here. So, linked to that, the land adoption plan that has been provided by the applicant is showing what is intended to be adopted by KCC Highways. This is obviously a particular issue that members have raised with regards to actually getting roads adopted because of the control that the KCC need to have and need to then maintain those roads. So under the original Section 106 agreement linked to the outline, the Spine Road and associated junctions are required to be offered for adoption through that original obligation. So that is secured through the legal agreement. The applicant has put forward that they're looking for all these areas to be adopted by KCC. It does include the area and for the pedestrian, the potential pedestrian access on this site, and also the drop-off bays here. So there are provisions that if there was something in the future to come forward at this point, then that could be helped and facilitated by KCC, who would control the land in front of that point there. But again, that is not a requirement of either the outline, and it can't be considered as part of this reserved matters to put any separate entrance in there through this. So, looking at the rest of the layout, we have the refuse strategy. So this has been looked at in terms of a refuse vehicle and tracking a 13-metre long refuse vehicle. What you can see at different points on this is the maximum carry distance from dwellings where they are maybe served by shared surfaces, so where a 13-metre vehicle wouldn't come down. It's to look to ensure that there is a carry distance as required by QDO2, which is the 15 metres, which is what the policy requires. So we are confident that this can be, the development can accommodate our refuse trucks. In addition, one of the issues that was raised by Highways related to making sure fire appliances could move around the site as well and have the access that's required. That has been confirmed as well, so details of that has been provided. And then in terms of other issues with the layout, we have been provided with the details of where the affordable dwellings are to go, and obviously which dwellings they are. So in terms of the affordable provision, it's 31 dwellings for affordable rent, 14 dwellings are the shared ownership units. The shared ownership units are in blue, and these are the houses. The affordable rent primarily make up the 1- and 2-bed flats, which are located the sort of L-shaped buildings that are shown here and at the top here. So that is the needed amount, the needed tenure for the affordable provision. It's been agreed by our strategic housing team that is the best type of accommodation that's the most needed, and therefore that has got their support. So in terms of looking at the other issues to do with the reserve matters, we've got the scale, which is part of consideration. So there is a condition on the outline application which relates to the development being 2-storey with accommodation at roof level. So what's been proposed is to have accommodation at roof level in the dwellings that are in the dark blue. We'll look at the elevations of these in a bit. So you've primarily got dwellings or development that is on the actual link road itself, but you have got some dwellings where you've got rooms in the roof and small front dormer windows on the rear secondary streets. The vast majority of dwellings, though, are 2-storey across the site. So one other element that it's worth mentioning is this is just a section through the site. So if you look at the image at the bottom right, you can see a section through Manston Road as it is now. There is a level change when you get onto the site. Again, you'll have noticed this if you've been close to the site. We do consider that with regards to the actual flat block, which we'll look at on the street scenes, that it is appropriate to have something that does have presence when you enter the site and on the actual main road. And given the width of that road distance and the dwellings opposite and the height of them, we consider that it would be acceptable and appropriate to have buildings of the scale that are shown. So looking at the actual appearance of these dwellings, we've got a number of different house types. So all these different colours represent different house types. Specifically, this is to try and ensure that there is interest within the street scenes rather than having a homogeneous housing development. So we have got different types that we're going to look at. So just starting off by looking at, we're just going to look at the section across on Manston Road here. So we're going to look at an image on the top, which is the dwellings that are, if you are looking from the roundabout into the site, you're looking on the left to see the flat block, and then as they wrap around with the terrace here, and then you've got at the bottom of the image that we're going to look at, you've got the dwellings that are set behind on a tertiary access road. So you've got the development at the top there is where it curves around, so you can see the terrace properties there, and then at the bottom you can see those dwellings that are on the right-hand side as you're looking at the site, which are set back from that frontage. So this is giving an idea of the type of materials that are being provided and the variation in architectural styles. We're then going to look at the flats in a bit more detail. So the elevation at the top right-hand corner is a very important elevation because this is the elevation that faces the footpath. So the footpath that runs to that northwest corner for the pedestrian route. The aim here, in coordination with both highways and the applicant, is to make sure that it's not a bland elevation, that it is a clearly well-surveilled elevation with a number of windows in there, and we do think that design is successful in terms of achieving that aim. So looking at that flat layout, just to show you, we've got a mix of 2 and 1 bed units. At the rear of the flat block, you have the bin storage and you also have some cycle storage. So there is a condition which requires details of that cycle storage to be submitted. Not the location, but actually details of them, because there's a query about whether or not you can actually have double stacked cycle parking there, and obviously we want to make sure we're getting all the required cycle parking that is needed. Then you've got the first floor plan for the flat, and again this is the long elevation here is the elevation that faces onto that footpath, and then you've got the top floor of the flats here. So just having a look at the other end of the site and showing where what the frontage looks like onto Nash Road. So you've got, we're going to look at E first, section E here in black. So you've got detached properties along. So the section E is at the top here. So you can see again detached properties. You've got a mix of design and styles with buff brick, red brick, and different coloured weatherboarding and different roof tiles and colours as well. And then on the bottom image there, you've also got the other side of the road. Again, you've got detached properties. These are set back within the site. I did just want to show this image because it shows a section of the site. So that top image there, which is the dwellings that front Nash Road, what it will actually look like, because of the change in level that we saw in the photo, is actually there is a slope down. And again, this is actually why we've put on a condition for land levels on the site, because there will be some undulation as you go through the site because it's not a flat site. So very quickly, we're just going to look through a few other elevations just to show the types of dwellings. So first of all, we're going to look at A, which is the dwellings that front onto the public open space. So again, you've got similar design to the ones that we've looked at. And then looking at section B here, so we're on the left-hand side, or the western half of the scheme. Again, similar. So these are the dwellings that front the local distributor road. And then looking at the dwellings on C over in this area here. So this is one of the secondary roads. You've got this type of mix, so more brick-based properties to the rear. I did just want to show you one other elevation, which is a dwelling that we haven't seen, which actually looks similar to this dwelling in the centre here, where there are terraces across the site which have this unit. So this is one of the affordable units, so 3-bed units. They accord with the HCA's guidelines on minimum size standards. All the dwellings across the site comply with policy QDO4, which is looking at the nationally described space standards as well. And the report outlines how the requirements of the adaptable accessible units has also been met across the site. So this is an image just showing the different materials. We have talked about this already. So it's red brick, buff brick. You've got different types of tiles, so grey tiles, red tiles and brown tiles. You've also got different types of weatherboarding as well on the site. So we have got a good mix and variety across the site. We do feel it's successful in terms of what it's achieving there. In terms of the other area that the Reserve Matters covers, which is landscaping. So I haven't really discussed it, but there is a scheme of tree planting throughout the site. So you'll have seen that from the adoption plan, a lot of the areas to be adopted includes the areas that are including trees to be planted. So there are a number of conditions that have been placed upon the application, or any approval, which would require a landscape management plan to be submitted. All the landscape works that are shown on this plan are required to be provided, and if there are any trees that die within the 5 years, we have that clause on there, so they have to be replanted. So there are issues that have been looked at in the report as well with regards to a extended phase 1 habitat survey that's been carried out. That has required the placement around the site, and you can see them on the edge of the development around here, of a number of nesting bird boxes and bat boxes. One of the issues that has been discussed in the report relates to skylarks. Specifically, this is that skylarks weren't found when the application was approved in originally it was the application was looked at in 2017. Subsequently, there was a condition placed on that required an updated survey being carried out. What was observed in that survey was that habitats were seen on site with regards to skylarks, and there is a report from the ecologist that submitted the report indicating that by virtue of the development there would be a neighbourhood level impact on skylarks, even though skylarks weren't actually observed on the site itself. So that is as a result of the fact that during the planning process the site wasn't used as agricultural fields and has then subsequently been more overgrown than it was originally. So this impact is acknowledged within the report and is weighed up against it. It has been looked at as to whether or not mitigation could be provided on site. It's not appropriate given the fact of the road that goes through the site. You can't provide mitigation on site that would sufficiently mitigate for the skylarks, and there's no obligation that could be added at this stage in the process to provide something off-site, and therefore it has been looked at in the weighing up of the application and considered in the report. One other point on landscaping, another issue that we've looked at is to try and ensure that all side boundaries or rear boundaries that go onto the back roads are walls and not fences. So this is a plan just indicating that. And very last thing, the play area. So it's actually rare we've got the details of the equipment that would be provided in that play area. I'm not going to show you this in detail, but it provides a range of equipment on there which are all linked to the numbering. This has all been available on the public access system. So to give you a quick update on the conditions that have been updated, if I find my sheet. So the update on the conditions, the landscape master plan that you've seen throughout this presentation is revision 07, which the conditions are updated to reflect that, which is as clarified about the surface material of the roads. Condition 6 in the agenda pack, which talks about the provision of cycle parking for the dwellings, so not for the flats, there is an alteration to that condition so that actually the cycle parking has got to be, so that basically links the provision of the cycle parking to the dwelling to which the cycle parking must be provided, i.e. an individual dwelling can't be occupied until the cycle parking is provided for that dwelling. The way it was worded previously would mean that cycle parking on a development a house one end of the site would restrict occupation on a house the other end of the site. Condition 9 is proposed to be updated about the play space. So there are a number of conditions that are on the outline application which are looking at how the site is going to be phased for the highways works to be completed. So it's not a matter of the reserve matters, but it's a matter of the outline. So that is still in discussion with KCC, and therefore we don't know how the site is going to come forward in terms of which bits are built first. And therefore the idea for condition 9 is to add into that play space condition that a phasing plan would have to be submitted and approved in writing by the local planning authority to identify at what point in occupation the play area will be provided by, which has got to be agreed prior to the occupation of any dwelling approved. The idea being that if the development starts in this corner of the site here, that we can work out at what point do we need to provide the play area for the rest of the site in terms of the number of dwellings. In terms of condition 11, which is looking at the provision of the drop-off bays, specifically we want to add an additional trigger to try and make sure that that parking is provided at the earliest possible point. So currently the wording states that prior to the first occupation of any dwelling on street 02 or 03, the drop-off bays are provided. But the addition to that condition would say prior to the first occupation of any dwelling on streets 2 or 3, or the full removal of the parking on Manston Road, which has been approved through the outline, or whichever is the earlier. So whichever happens first, the parking has to be provided. And those are the changes on the conditions. So overall, the scheme has taken account of a number of concerns that officers had and consultees had with regards to the scheme. And with the amendments that have been proposed, it is considered that it is in accordance with both the outline provisions that were made in the approval outline and also local plan and MPPF. And therefore, the recommendation is for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Thank you. And I have Councillor Bayford first, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very mindful of what we're being asked to decide tonight. So much has already been decided in outline, including the access points. Looking at appearance, landscaping, layout and scale, I personally can see no reason to go against the officer's reasons for recommendations for approval. However, having listened to our speakers tonight, can I ask, were the representatives for the school in any way involved in the negotiations about the drop-off points and things like that? And if they weren't, or even if they were, as the development is going to be phased, is there not still some room for negotiation of the possible suggestions of better sightings? Thank you.
So in terms of the outline application, so the information that's been provided relates to discussion at the time between KCC and the school, and that was in 2016, to inform the submission that then subsequently came in. In terms of, since the reserved matters application has been in, there have been a number of meetings between the applicant and the school. There hasn't been a resolution with regards to agreement from the school with regards to what's being put forward. However, the limits of the application in terms of the approval of what we can look at in reserved matters, that has been provided through the submission. The particular point obviously related to the drop-off area. If we're, being that matters are confined by considering the layout of the scheme, the things that could have been looked at would be whether or not the drop-off area was someone else on the scheme. However, what's been proposed has been looked at, is safe, there is no harm created by this to refuse the application for the position of those drop-off bays, and it does, if there is any future change, and there is an agreement later on down the line, then that would allow for the drop-off bays to be in the location where they could be more useful. But again, I mean, one point that's been raised is about the distance to be walked around the site. It isn't considered that that is, that results in any highway safety harm whatsoever. I mean, I appreciate the point that's being raised about that it's more inconvenient, but that isn't a reason for refusal of a planning application. And the aim has been working with highways to ensure that we have a safe pedestrian route through the site, and we do consider there have been great improvements to do that, and therefore that's why the recommendation is as it is.
Councillor Alban.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I've just stuffed a mint in my mouth, so I beg your pardon if I slur a bit. Councillor Bayford has just touched on the issue in relation to the school, and I think I just wanted to get complete clarity. I totally understand what Mr. Livingston has said. I just wanted to, the clarification is on the part of the consultation on the outline consent. Obviously, I take it the school was consulted with during that particular process, and as to whether the school had disagreement about the outline consent of what's proposed for the drop-off points, etc., etc. And that's just one point. Obviously, when it comes to children, especially young children and schools, it's very emotive, and obviously, the head teachers are very protective of the children within that school. So I've taken that on board, but I'm going to take the whole. We've got to look at the application on the whole. Getting to the application itself, I think the layout is very good. It's exceptional. It's clear. It's concise. The properties themselves are well located. They are the materials are totally and utterly acceptable. It's got a mixture of housing, from one-bedroom flats to detached houses, and it's a good site for development. Obviously, the outstanding issues for residents are the highway issues. So I want to listen to what other members have to say before I make my mind up, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just come back on the consultation point. So the school were sent a letter as part of the outline application. So there was consultation that occurred with the original outline application when it came in, and we received a number of comments to that, and there was quite a bit of press coverage at the time. Subsequently, when it came back before members in 2020, it was only looking at the viability following that, so there was no further public consultation at that point. But again, there was obviously publicity at the time again, and various articles, but the consultation occurred at the point of when the outline application came in. I think it was really important, though, that obviously that is not relevant to what's being considered this evening in the sense of any issues due to the consultation. I did just want to, though, touch on the point about highways impacts, because obviously that has been mentioned. Again, points of access and the impact from this number of houses on the highway network has been dealt with already, cannot be dealt with in the reserve matters. It's got our outline approval already.
Sorry, Councillor Wing.
I've got a number of questions. We're obviously looking at a piece of land which was farmland and then left wild, and we have an area that is prone to flooding, particularly by the cricket club. It's entirely across I've driven through a road which is entirely flooded. On that part, how are we going to deal with the runoff from these buildings? Because now we've got a piece of land which was, in a sense, a natural sponge that is now covered with an awful lot of hard standing stuff which isn't porous. I've got a number of questions, so I'll just do them one at a time.
I appreciate doing it one at a time, thank you. So the first point in terms of flood risk, so that is an issue that was looked at outline. Specifically, it's on the outline application, condition 23, which requires that prior to any development occurring, they need to provide a detailed sustainable surface water drainage scheme, which accords with the strategy that was produced at the outline. So in terms of provision of what they all potentially need to do underground, in this instance, with this layout, it's mandated through the outline application that's provided. So again, it has already been looked at outline.
Have we got a situation, because we know there's a big issue with flooding from one point can impact in our seas. So are we assuming that surface runoff won't go into our main sewerage system and that it will be dealt with in another way through SUDs or?
So I can't confirm the method of drainage. I do know that the next condition on the outline, which is condition 24, is that basically no development should take place until the scheme of sewage disposal is provided, because obviously you're providing a new road directly through the site, and therefore we need to make sure that it's got adequate connections to the network. Obviously, this was an issue, as you quite rightly identified, it was a big issue for the Shondane Road application, and given the nature of Tivoli Brook as well. And so that's why we refer to them as grampian conditions. No development can happen until that's come in. So with both of these schemes, we will look to get the feedback in terms of the surface water drainage of KCC as the local lead flood authority and the SUDS team there in looking to ensure that the scheme specifically under the flood risk assessment that was submitted is accorded with on that.
Also, I'm glad to see there's some social housing, but I'm deeply, deeply upset once again that we've gone from 30% to 18%. Could you also give me the breakdown? So we're now down to 18%. I don't know what that is of 240 houses, but how many one-bedroom units, two-bedroom units, three-bedroom units?
Absolutely. So in terms of the affordable rent, so that's the most acute need. So 70% of those 45 units are affordable rent, and we've got 12 one-beds, 16 two-beds, so those are flats. And then you've got 2 three-bed houses and 1 four-bed house. And then with the shared ownership units, they are all houses. You've got 5 two-bed houses, 7 three-bed houses, and 4... No, sorry, hang on, I'm going to do that again because I got them around the wrong way. Shared ownership, you've got the 2-bed houses, there are 5 of them. For the 3-bed houses, there are 7 of them. And for the 4-bed houses, there are 2 of them.
It's good to see there's a good distribution and they are not all stuffed in one space, as we've seen with other developments with smaller units. I am a bit concerned about the flat. I obviously come from a teaching background, secondary school teaching, although I did some outreach into junior schools, and I've got deep respect for our junior school colleagues, our primary colleagues. But you've got the flat building there looks right over the junior school playground. Personally, I wouldn't want to live in a flat that overlooked a school playground. Maybe that's because it's too much like a busman's holiday for me. It's the unit up in the corner. But I would be also worried as a member of staff within that school about the possibility of being overlooked. It's the one up there, I think. Is it the big one up in the corner?
Yeah, if I go back to the sorry, I'm going to go back all the way to the detailed one. Well, in terms of, obviously there's no, when we look at overlooking, we're looking at residential amenity primarily. In terms of the orientation, the aim here is that actually it's orientated so that either it's an angle rather than facing directly in or directly in there. There are dwellings here that face towards it, but again, the screening that's been shown there is under the control of the school in terms of those trees. So that's, again, we do consider that relationship to be acceptable. I mean, this is pretty common. I mean, you just can go up to the north a bit more and you find the other primary school when you've got various sort of, overlooking that does occur there. But the aim has been to try and orientate it away so it's not quite as direct with the largest building, which is the flat block, as you say.
And I obviously, I know it's something we can't, but we've got both the school and the developer in the room, and I would urge them both to go back to KCC. I believe that the existing situation for parents is they park at the bottom by the, where all the roads meet there, by the entrance of the school, which is what, every other school in the country does. I do have an issue over the real safeguarding of young people, very young people. If they were secondary school kids, they'd take their time coming across the field and they'd conveniently be covered in mud, so we'd have to send them home. But I've got real concerns because even if you provide the school with a gate, and I know this is nothing we can discuss, but I'm trying to give you the situation for both the residents and also for the school. And I think it is something the school and the developer need to go back to KCC and address. That gate would have to be manned. That gate could not be left open for parents to just come through from 8 o'clock until 9 o'clock. There's a real safeguarding issue with unmanned gates in all of our schools. I worked in a school where we were really unfortunate that somebody got in our gate and started throwing concrete blocks into our classrooms through skylarks. It wasn't a pleasant experience. And we soon bolstered up our security. So you can't have a gate there that's open all the time if in the end a gate is put there. But what I would also say to the developer, I think there's just under 300 young people in this school, so you're potentially looking at 200 to 250 families. There's probably some siblings there that are going to arrive between 8 o'clock and 9 in the morning and go home, I don't know what time the school finishes, between 3 and 4. There are 12 parking bays or drop-off points. Now, that estate is going to be swamped and at gridlock at that time and that time. So although this is something we can't vote for or against because it's not part of this. I would urge the developer and the school to go back to KCC and address that issue. There are 12 drop-off points. Those drop-off points we know will be parked in permanently. They won't be there at 8 o'clock in the morning and they won't be there at the end of the day because somebody will park in them. So that's all I'm going to say. I can't, you know, that's out of our remit. So I move on to street lighting. Some of the new...
Hang on. Can the officer come back?
Could I just come
for
back
you?
on one
Yep.
point, just because there is a condition. So I showed the adoption plan, which shows the provision to adopt that row of parking. There is a condition specifically that, again, before any dwelling is occupied along that stretch, would require details of signage and markings in terms of the actual, to actually secure those to be for drop-off. The idea behind the layout specifically, and that is something to consider, the layout inside the development is something that's under consideration today, relates to the fact that there is a smaller number of units along that stretch. So if I skip through, I'll go back, sorry, this one here. Along this stretch here, so that all of the cars along this, all of the dwellings along this stretch have got off-street parking. The idea as well is that you've got 105 visitor spaces across the site. Again, Highways wanted it higher because, and this is one of the reasons why the 12 bays are provided specifically for this, and that was why it was looked at in the outline, is because irrespective of any work occurring at Manston Road, any new housing development next to a school is going to get parking at peak times. The fact that these spaces, it's 12 spaces rather than the sort of 7 to 8 that are in front of the school at the moment. Obviously, would be removed as part of the highways work separately. So, in terms of the change, in terms of number, on just a numerical basis, this is comparable in terms of providing 12 on this site. I do appreciate your point, though. It doesn't stop the fact that people will not just park here, they will park all around there, which is exactly why the 105 spaces have been designed so they are in lay-by parking to try and keep the free flow of traffic there. It's always difficult when you're putting housing development next to a school because you've got existing highway constraints as well, and it does require a joint effort going forward between KCC as the adopting highway authority and also parking enforcement with regards to waiting restrictions. But in terms of facilitating it through the layout, through this scheme, we do think this is the best solution to try and do that. Thank you.
I will say that 12 bays for potentially 300 kids being dropped off that are not directly outside the school means that there's a 10 or 15 minute walk or even 20 round the corner if you've got a couple of kids in a buggy and you've got to get them out the car into the buggy and round the corner. So there will be neighbourly impact from the school impacting on this residential property and now the residential impacting on that. I'd like to go to the tree planting because as we've seen in Westwood Cross, many of the trees are dead and dying. Is there aftercare of all the extra trees and bushes that will be planted there? Because, residents remain really disappointed with some of these new developments where we're just seeing dead trees, and Westwood Cross is a typical example of that.
So it's condition 8 and condition 10. So condition 8 is a landscape management plan. So primarily that's to try and cover the open space to get the details of that, but it does include all landscaped areas as well, separately, including the routes through that I showed you with regards to that open space. And then condition 10 is what we would say is the standard condition, which requires, which has actually been changed because now it actually requires photographic evidence to be submitted once the work has been carried out, and then any trees that die within those 5 years have to be replaced. In addition, the primary tree planting will occur actually on the spine road, on that highway verge, so it will be a requirement of probably KCC in terms of doing that as well. So that does actually give a bit more rigour as well to make sure that they are replaced if there is a problem.
The last question is, because people are walking around, is that some of the new estates don't have street lighting, I've noticed in Westwood Cross. Is there street lighting within this development?
Yeah, so as part of the adoption of the spine road, there'll have to be street lighting because it's a local distributor standard road. There is also a condition on the outline that I cannot remember the numbering of, but I'm pretty positive that there is there we go, condition 27 on the outline provides a requirement for a detailed outdoor lighting scheme to be submitted, including types of lights, orientation and angle of lighting columns, extent of illumination, and measures to contain the light within the curtilage of the site, which has to, again, be provided.
The bit where we're expecting parents to walk to
Yeah,
school.
and that's something that Highways specifically commented on as well, to ensure that's the case, yeah.
Thank you. I have Councillor Bright next.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, first of all, I totally share the concerns of Councillor Wing and Councillor Bayford here, but it's really frustrating because our hands are tied, and I can only comment on the layout, appearance, scale and landscaping, which is very frustrating for me. I totally empathise with the challenges that this is going to provide for the school. I worked in a school, I know what it's like at drop-off times and pick-up times. It's a nightmare. 12 parking bays is not adequate. So in terms of layout, my comment is probably still relevant, but I just wondered if it is possible to create, to make sure that the 12 bays are actually designated school, like a school street, basically. I don't know whether that's something that you have to go through Kent Highways to set in place, so they are actually reserved for the school, and also whether there's any space at all for a couple of disabled parking bays closer to the entrance to the school somewhere. But again, I mean, 12 parking bays is not adequate when by the time you've parked up and walked your kids around and maybe spoken to a teacher and then walked back. I don't know how they're going to manage that. So unfortunately, the school is going to have to get creative with walking buses and things like that. It's sad, and I'm really sorry that I can't think of any solutions. But in terms of the landscaping, it's really good to see that amount of open space there. And I don't really have any more comments about appearance and scale, so thank you.
Just to come back on the point, so that in terms of road markings and signage, that is required through the condition to get the details of what the expectations are with regards to that parking, again, prior to occupation of any dwelling along that stretch, to ensure that, and again, working with Highways in terms of the adoption as well, to ensure there are restrictions, certainly signage to indicate how that should be used in terms of for school parking. One point in terms of the provision of additional parking over and above in the layout to get, for example, disabled bays, I think what is relevant in terms of when the outline was looked at is that whilst the parking has been removed from directly in front of the site, that obviously wasn't allocated parking. It didn't have an allocated disabled bay. Obviously, I understand it's directly next to the entrance, but anyone who enters that school as a parent has to walk along the drive from that entrance. You can't drive into the site necessarily unless there are other provisions available depending on what the arrangements are. And obviously in terms of it's not a matter for consideration about any potential buses of special provision which will, I'm sure, be able to get onto the site directly, which will be part of the operational management of the school itself. But again, I understand that the issue here relates to considerations of what's been approved at the outline, and a number of members on the committee weren't present on the committee when it was discussed originally in 2017 and then subsequently when it was in 2020. But the layout has tried to facilitate a appropriate level of parking on site and an appropriate route for the school, for people that would drop their children off if they're driving. There is still parking available on Shondane Road further up, and that's currently what's used at the moment by the school. There are only a few spaces directly in front of the school, and whilst the turnover may be quicker, that clearly, from Highways' perspective, had highway safety concerns because of how it was used. So it is tricky, but we do consider that the parking that's been provided on site and the layout within the remit of the reserved matters does satisfy what both the outline is requiring to happen and also the policies.
Councillor Keane.
Thank you. Picking up Councillor Wing's point about the aftercare of trees, it's good to hear that you require photographic evidence. Is there anything we can do to strengthen the aftercare of trees? I know you say about they have to be replaced after 5 years, if they die within the 5 years. But we're still left with a lot of new developments which have dying trees around them, and they may eventually be replaced, but they look awful. So I just don't know, is there something we can put into the condition to strengthen the aftercare? And just a second question. I'm concerned about the impact on the crematorium, especially during construction. I know there's a comment on there. I don't know if I've missed it, but I couldn't see what was put in place to actually try and reduce the noise and, you know, sort of effect on the crematorium. So if you can just outline that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the aftercare for trees, so currently the way the condition, obviously the addition of the photographic evidence is a new element of things. I've mentioned before that we do have more staff looking at developments as they're being constructed now, with work between the enforcement team, the conditions officer, the planning assistant that deals with trees, as well as officers. In this instance, as I've mentioned before, with the spine road itself, obviously there is more control because it will be KCC, and obviously that allows us to make sure that they actually accord with what they're required to do. But fundamentally, it does come down to one, us checking developments, being able to enforce that condition, and also people raising the issue when they see housing developments. And actually, there are sites very close to this that we've served breach condition notices on, because of the landscaping has not been put in. So it is just an ongoing issue. In terms of the crematorium, there is on the outline a construction management plan. It does include the requirement to look at a construction environmental management plan looking at noise. That is also particularly important when it comes to working out how vehicles are going to be routed to the site with regards to the school, which is something, again, looked at on the outline, and therefore will need to be looked at very carefully by KCC Highways and ourselves to make sure that that's sorted. But that will be a matter that during construction there will be disturbance because of the nature of in terms of noise, but it's to try and avoid a significant impact where possible. In terms of long term and the relationship between this site and the crematorium, obviously it is an allocated site that's been put forward for housing in this location. There is a tree line that we looked at on the photo that you can see in the image a bit here that runs on the crematorium site that does give a buffer to an extent. I know that the concerns have been raised, and I have been speaking with colleagues and the head of environmental protection about this issue specifically. There will obviously, the development will result in activity, but not prohibitive in terms of the operation of the crematorium.
In the report it said about an acoustic fence. Is that something that could be required?
So it's not a requirement of what's been put forward because in terms of that, the idea that the noise from residential premises would cause harm isn't borne out by on an evidential basis. The principle behind whether or not a development would result in a sort of agent of change principle, that there would be a problem for either new residents, that they might raise a concern about noise coming from the site next door, or that there would be disturbance to the operation of the crematorium. It's difficult. The use of a crematorium isn't protected by any planning policy. We look at residential amenity, and so there may be inconvenience, but it's not something that would warrant refusal of a planning application. So during construction, it'll be a matter for the construction management plan, but subsequently, it's going to be a change in the relationship. But it is understood by the crematorium that it's an allocated site, therefore it is going to come forward. And they are very clearly aware of it. That's why obviously they've commented on it as well.
Councillor Matterface.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at condition 8 in this document, talking about the landscape management plan. The last sentence, the amenity area should be managed in accordance with the approved landscape management plan in perpetuity. Could I ask, will that apply to the play area? Or if not, who will be responsible for maintaining the play area? Because I've seen developments, not specifically here, where there's a play area, but nobody's got the responsibility of looking after it.
Thank you, Chair. So the responsibility for the play area rests in an obligation within the Section 106 agreement from the outline, which talks about the open space and having a management company to do that. The reason why the condition's been put on is more for the other landscaped areas, but its obligation, the obligation would be for the play area to be provided as per the plans that we've got and then maintained subsequently. Previously, obviously, play areas were provided to local authorities who looked after them, but that hasn't happened for a long time, I think it's probably best to say.
Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of things I want to talk about, really. As one of the three of us here, with Councillors Bayford and Auburn, who sat on the planning committees in 2020, when this came back to us, following the viability assessment, I do have to say, with all due respect to the representative from the developer, I do find it rather galling, having sat through quite a long and with a lot of heartache we spoke about this reduction, for him to come back to us extolling the virtues of so many 45 units being added to the affordable units after we've been through quite a lot of heartache, forcing us through to agree to the...
Can I just pause you a moment?
You can.
So I think it's quite important that the applicant isn't the applicant for the outline application. So that was a different applicant. Obviously, they've benefited from the outline application, but just to be clear on that point. Thanks.
Right. I shall be clear on that, but I'm sure he's as familiar with the history of this as what we are, so I still stand by that. And I did have a question about the history, because as you know, I asked about the history of this planning application, which is now 6.5 years old. And one of the other reasons it came back to us in 2020 wasn't just the viability assessment. I think it was also because it had got to 3 years since the outline permission was given, and we were asked to revisit I'm just trying to find exactly what it said in the report. It's reported back to members for approval of the new heads of terms and other planning obligations of resolution for approval of the outline planning application subject to receipt of legal agreement securing various obligations. And I think the condition on the outline application had reserved matters had to come back within 3 years. That's correct, isn't it? And it hadn't come back, so this came...
Well, no, so what happens is when planning permission is granted, then for an outline, then there's 3 years from that date. Planning permission hadn't actually been granted. It was only that there was basically approval to grant subject to the legal agreement, but the legal agreement, when we obviously didn't actually come in requiring those heads of terms at that point. Just to another thing on when it came back to members in 2020, it was considered that it was necessary to come back, not just because we couldn't go anywhere because we hadn't agreed the viability or hadn't agreed the reduction in affordable housing, but also we had a new local plan that had been adopted as well, which is obviously, as you know, which is covered in the report as well.
Okay, thanks. So obviously it was outline permission, or the viability assessment was agreed, the changes to the affordable housing, that was approved at the end of 2020, but the actual planning application wasn't approved until 2022, was it? The 2nd of February 20. So it took them 2 years to agree the heads of terms and all of that.
Well, so it was November 2020 and it was February 2022, so it was a year and a couple of months. So that was negotiation over the actual legal agreement and the wording of that, which is absolutely, I agree, it's a long time. They do often take quite a long time to wrangle and negotiate on that basis.
Yeah, so it is a long time. And obviously, one of the points I wanted to raise was, the land that originally got outline planning application, which had the biodiversity reports on it, which had been agricultural land, because it's been so long, it's changed. The land is now no longer agricultural land. It's been left to be wild almost. So it has attracted new wildlife as you mentioned. There are now skylarks have been nesting there, and I'm sure there's other wildlife that's moved in, that it's unfortunate that we're not able to consider that, because all we're told we're able to consider is access, layout and landscaping and various other bits and pieces. So it's nothing we can consider. I mean, I will say that the layout, actually, I hadn't fully appreciated that actually this would be quite good layout if it wasn't that road that runs through it now is actually a main road, isn't it? Because I've occasionally driven down Nash Road when I've had to get into Margate when other roads have been closed. And now, if I came down Nash Road to go into Margate, I'd actually been turning left there onto the housing estate and then turning right off it again, back onto Nash Road. Or I would be going ahead to the roundabout and then turning right to get into Margate that way. So in fact, everyone who's living along that road, if they're not coming in to drop their kids off to school, they're going into Margate, that's going to be a really busy road for people. So I am actually very concerned about that. And I do find it very frustrating, and I think a number of us do, that a lot of these concerns that we have, we're not actually able to call out that much, because someone in KCC has looked at the report and has reported that it's all acceptable. And so there's not a great deal we can do about that. But I personally don't find it acceptable, looking at the road layout. And I will say the whole discussion about consultation with the school about these quite big changes that are going to be in place for parents and for the children. They're going to have to change their working practices in the morning and the afternoon for drop off and pick up. And while it might not be the applicant's obligation to talk to the school, and they've only got to produce something within the red boundary, as you say, that meets planning requirements, the fact that they haven't meaningfully, whether it's the original applicant or the current applicant, haven't meaningfully engaged with the school about this is extremely disappointing. And I don't really see what's stopping them do that now. I really don't. If the school are saying, come and talk to us, we know what's going to happen here. It's very difficult not to be approved by the committee. But for the developer not to want to engage with the school meaningfully about this, whether they have to or not, it would be such a big improvement for them to do so. So I would join Councillor Wing and the others in asking them please to do that. So at least try and make the best of this that they can.
Can we just come back on that, please, Councillor Garner?
All right. Well, I've only got one other little one that you won't have to come back on, hopefully, because you'll have a ready answer to the fact that when they put all the fences up around the houses, and the walls up around the gardens, that they will be putting holes in for hedgehogs to come through.
So in terms of the hedgehog requirement, I believe that there's a package of ecological mitigation that is provided. In terms of that is something that obviously we can report back. One thing I'd just say in terms of the point about meaningful engagement, obviously I'm not party to the meetings that have occurred, and there have been, I believe, about 5 or so between the school and the developer in this reserved matters about the site. So that has obviously has occurred, and that has been a discussion that's gone on. I think just to touch on the point about what's within the scope of the reserved matters, in terms of the particular point about skylarks, obviously it's the habitats that have been seen. It wasn't the skylarks themselves. The point relates to provide the mitigation would require it's not feasible, given that the site's been allocated with this road through it, in terms of getting something on site, with no ability to provide something off site that it hasn't been linked into the outline. So I understand the point, especially because of the delay in this site coming forward. I mean, obviously, in terms of the road, that is something that was considered through not only the local plan itself, when it allocated this site with this road through it and all the transport modelling that came with it, but also through the outline application as well. And it is part of the wider Thanet transport strategy, which has been put forward to improve around Coffin House Corner the free flow of traffic, to be able to accommodate not just the development around it, but actually to improve the current situation, irrespective of of this site coming forward in itself for development. So, there are a few things that have been looked at outlined, but I understand your point about with regards to, what is being looked at tonight.
Sorry, I will just say, to be fair, the site is allocated in the local plan because it was given outline planning approval in 2017, because we didn't have a local plan, so we didn't have a land allocation, so we had to approve it, outline approval. Is that
well, no, it wasn't approved in 2017. No, it wasn't outline approved. That's what I'm saying. There was a resolution to grant for approval. It was already one of the sites that was put forward in the local plan at that point in time. It has subsequently been approved, but the local plan for 2020 took a significant number of years, as we know, and with sites being added. And this was a site that was already well in the works as coming forward, to come forward. It obviously came forward on that basis because of dealing with the road network around there. It is also a site that has development either side of it, and it is a logical expansion to provide it as is. But again, that principle has been agreed, as you say, through the outline.
Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. There's been really interesting discussion, and I thank Mr Livingstone for his detailed explanations and comments. At the end of the day, we are looking at a site that has been approved for 250 dwellings, an excellent mix of housing in size, in terms of size, design, materials, and also landscaping is being put forward. Frankly, and also the viability assessment has approved the 18% affordable housing. So that's something that we are not here to discuss, and I feel that there's a good mix there as well. So I would like to approve support the officer's recommendation for this application. Thank you.
Do I have any other request to speak? In that case, I would like to add my own comments. In as much as I do very much like the design of the buildings, but I share Councillor Wing's concern. I do think this is going to be gridlock, not only with children coming in, but not many of those children that live on the estate are necessarily going to want to go to the Catholic primary school. So there's going to be children leaving the site and adults leaving the site at what is the morning rush hour. And I'm also I'm not overjoyed with the main road going through the middle of the estate, but I understand that that's not changeable. But I am concerned at 7 entry and access points over what is actually quite a short space. I understand that the design has been to avoid too many houses coming on and off of it, but there are still 7 road junctions along that short space. Can that be dealt with?
So that's less than was put forward in terms of the direct accesses. So in terms of to actually get into the rest of the site to provide the dwellings, this is the sort of the maximum number that we'd allow, but also it's to try and get as many routes sort of through the site as possible, really from a layout perspective. Just in terms of the point as well about the movements at the peak, in terms of the impact on the wider network, that was looked at as part of the outline application in terms of looking at the peak, but also in terms of how many vehicles are going to be generated in that morning rush hour, as well as that. It has been considered as part of, again, the Thanet transport strategy to get the road in there. I understand that the concerns relate to where the road goes, but to provide it at the standard that's required, to get the 3-metre footpaths either side of cycleways, to have it as a bus route, also with the crossing point that has been provided and the central refuges as well. it is considered that this is the way that the site was envisioned to be developed in the allocation, and obviously that route has been, the points in and out have been approved already by the outline as well. I understand that we'd want to try and avoid as many direct accesses as possible onto that road because of the fact that it's a local distributor standard, but it's considered that this is an appropriate balance to minimise the number whilst also providing actually having less parking around the back, which is what would happen in any event if you didn't have those direct accesses. You would just have large parking courts to try and accommodate the dwellings that you'd have at the front, and this is an appropriate balance, we'd say. Highways, again, have looked at it, they're looking to adopt it, and have signed off as being safe. They've looked at the visibility displays on those roads to come out, and obviously the Toucan crossing as well is put in there, which will also be usable for pedestrians as well. So it has been looked at. I do understand that the concerns about the fundamental of the road going through as it does, but yeah, Highways have advised that it is appropriate.
So can I just check that the 7 entrances are already agreed in the outline planning application?
So no, the layout inside the site and where the roads go off this, that is subject to this decision. It's the layout of the site.
The access to the terrace can't be changed, but sorry, the one going, the first turning on the right as you enter.
Oh, that's so in
that
terms of,
can't be changed, and
yeah,
that's fine.
This
But there are 6 others.
Yeah, so this
in a very short space of road.
This bit here has been approved as part of the outline. The roundabout itself was obviously included, and there's a requirement for any final version to be in geometric conformity. In terms of the access points here, into this road here, into this road here, and into this road here, they are proposed. They are part of the scheme. But to have one access point that then runs around without any other emergency access would cause layout problems of a different type to ensure that vehicles can move around there safely, as well as obviously getting the refuse trucks in, getting the fire trucks in, etc. So Highways have looked at the number of access points there, and it is considered to both be safe and not disrupt the free flow of traffic on that main road.
Councillor Matterface.
Very quick point. Mr Livingston will remember the days when we had these committees when the highways officers used to attend and they could answer these questions, but unfortunately that doesn't happen anymore.
I do try to get them, but they, yeah.
Councillor Huxley.
Can we recommend to KCC Highways that they had a 20 mph speed limit on the Spine Road, given the number of children, cars, etc., given that it probably will become a cut-through? Thanks.
So that would be subject to separate regime under the Highway Act in terms of what speed limit they put on there. I think because it's a local distributor road, that is something that would be separately looked at. I mean, certainly we can report back. It wouldn't be something that we could require, but it is something that we can pass that comment on.
Anyone else? In that case, we will now put the motion for the officer's recommendation for approval to the vote. All those in favour? And those against, please. That's carried, thank you. Were there any abstentions? Sorry, 1, thank you. That's still carried. Okay, I'm going to take a short break now. I realise that there are a number of people in the gallery who may have been here just for this item. It's a good opportunity if you want to leave, or you can stay if you like. But we will take a short 5-minute break. Thank you. All right, if we can all come back now. I just note that Councillor Heather Keane has not come back and she has actually left the meeting. So we are going to go straight into agenda item 4B, which is 12 Queen... Excuse me. 12 Queen Street, Ramsgate. I have, speaking under Council Rule 20.1, Councillor Austin. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. I am not seeking to persuade the committee not to approve this and go with the officer's recommendation, but I do want to make a number of points about this application because it has raised some concerns locally. The first one is there's been a great deal of confusion about the application, and I have to admit to a part in that confusion because I did actually write to the chair and the planning applications manager saying, do you know who's called this in? And they had to reply, you did. Because it has been quite a while since this started, and since most particularly we noticed the shop front being changed before we'd seen an application and with no prior warning, which caused a lot of concern in the community. Likewise, on the portal, the photograph of the property is actually of the property next door, which has resulted in the Ramsgate Heritage and Design Forum, who often make very helpful comments, commenting on the wrong property. In the report to this committee, we're told that Ramsgate Town Council made no comment. Actually, Ramsgate Town Council made no comment on the shopfront application because they regarded it as a done deal, but they dealt with separately the HMO and expressed a number of concerns, some of which in fact have been addressed by the officer recommendations. So it's all been a bit of a mess, and we are deeply concerned that the shopfront has simply been done. We understand that we're not in a position to object in view of the fact that it was replacing another modern shopfront, but I think it's the sad thing is the comments of the conservation officer who says this was an opportunity. There was an opportunity here to improve the shop fronts in Queen Street rather than take influence from the other poor design examples and further degrade the street scene with bland shop fronts with little to no traditional detail or design influence. This site is in a conservation area which should have been the main design consideration of the shop front proposed. But we are where we are. With regard to the HMO, looking at the papers, obviously we've got the principle of HMO development set out for us, which says that HMOs will be permitted except in Cliftonville and Margate Central, which is interesting because Central Harbour Ward in Ramsgate is the next busiest ward with HMOs in Thanet after Cliftonville West. So we already have more HMOs, and indeed there is one next door but one to this proposed development, and our rule is that we should not have more than one within a row of 20 buildings. So I'm concerned about that. We're also concerned about matters which officers have pointed out about bins, recycling, etc. There is a worry about Ramsgate Town Centre already. There's a lot of street drinking, there are a lot of problems. I'm not suggesting that residents here will contribute to it, but from what I've seen of HMOs residents previously, then it may include very vulnerable residents who would actually become victims of it. And for those reasons, we think that there should be detailed consideration of this proposal before it's accepted. Thank you.
Thank you. The Principal Planning Officer will now outline the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the application site outlined in red, and it is located in the Ramsgate Conservation Area. So this is a 3D image of the application site with the pin there, and as has been mentioned, there is a HMO in quite close proximity to the application site at number 8A Queen Street, which is located in this vicinity here. So the application is partly retrospective, as has been mentioned, and one element of the works that have already been carried out is the replacement of the shop front. So this is a shop front that was previously there. This is the new shop front, and members, which has now been installed, as members will note that it now includes a central door, but also a door that serves the upper floors, so they don't have to go directly through and only have access from within that commercial unit, as was the case previously. And so this is a photograph of the rear of the site. So this is the front elevation. It is labelled existing, but as you members will see, that was the old shop front with the door, the single door at the edge there. And this is again the photo of that shop front, just to remind members, as has been, and I will touch on the difference between the shop front and why we consider it to be acceptable when weighed against the benefits of the proposal a bit later. So looking at the floor plans, so this is the basement as it stood, so a storage, only used for storage. This was the ground floor when it was William Hill, so there's the shop front there, the single door, and all the things associated with William Hill as a commercial entity. This was the existing first floor, so you had a lounge, kitchen, bathroom, and a bedroom here. And if we move to the second floor, you had a further 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a separate WC. So moving on to the proposed plans, this is the shop front that members have seen. So the central door and the separate door. And again, the photographs, and members will note that there are some areas that are kept from the previous shop front that aren't affected, so it's an infill of that shop front. And as has been mentioned, the previous shop front, while it was more traditional perhaps in its actual architecture and design, it was aluminium, it wasn't a wooden historic shop front, and it did have large areas of glazing. And the replacement is actually similar in nature in that it is again a large area of glazing, and it does actually have the 2 separate doors, so the entrance into the commercial unit centrally, and that's separate access into the upper floors, which brings them much more easily into active use. And on balance, it has been considered that the harm to the conservation area from the loss of the previous shop front is less than substantial. So now just having a quick look at the floor plans. The basement remains as a storage place. And then we have the commercial unit here, the main shop, main commercial bit to the front, and this is all associated with that. And that's a separate door and the stairs leading up to the upper floors. So here we have the proposed first floor, so you can see a bedsit unit here, another bedroom here, a kitchen, a bath, a shower room and WC. There's an ensuite bathroom here, and there's also a communal living space here. And there is an area of outside area at first floor level here. And this is a photograph looking at that outside area, and just another view of it here. Moving on to the second floor, it's kind of very similar to how the second floor was previously laid out excuse me, when it was a flat. The main difference being you have a kitchen area here, but you still have a separate shower and WC, another room with an ensuite, and the 3 further bedrooms. Sorry, excuse me. Oh. So it is noted that there will be no increase in the number of bedrooms in the there would be an increase in the number of bedrooms in that it's gone from 4 to 5, but there is a condition restricting the number of occupants to 5 residents at any one time within the HMO. And it is acknowledged that whilst the site is in close proximity to the existing HMO, given the limited number of residents that would be housed in the property and its town centre location, this change is not considered to result in significant harm to the amenity or character of the area. And it's also considered that given the existing use and the town centre location, that there would be no significant impact upon the living conditions of neighbouring property occupiers, highway safety, biodiversity, or indeed the character and appearance of the conservation area. The application would facilitate the reuse of the first and second floors of the building as residential accommodation with an independent access rather than having to go through that commercial unit at ground floor level. And it is considered there would be public benefits from that happening. And it is considered, as mentioned previously, that the harm to the character and appearance of the conservation area from the changes to the shopfront were less than substantial. So it is considered, on balance, that the scheme is appropriate and it is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Councillor Alban.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think my main worry about this is where all the waste is going. I see from the report that on the outside part up on the first floor, I think, was where the 4-bed flat refuse was stored. But the building that flat hasn't been occupied for some time. It's clear that I don't know how long William Hill was there, because I can't remember the last time I had a bet in there anyway. But that concerns me. So where on collection day, where are they going to put this? Going to put it outside the front in Queen Street, which is really close to the centre of Ramsgate, the centre part. I am concerned about that because I don't think it's adequate. So whether they have we're going to use seagull-proof bags. Is that what we're going to have? And where's the other flats going to store them? They're going to carry them up onto that first floor? I don't think so. So I don't think it's adequate enough. I also think, but I do think, it's something that's needed. Whether there is one a little few doors up, this looks to be better than most I've seen with sizes. And even 2 of them have got en suites, which is pretty good for a multiple occupancy. But I am really concerned about the refuse. So that's one big issue. The other one about the shop front, I do take the point that Councillor Rostin made about that maybe we've lost a chance here to put something positive there. So if that hadn't been put in without consent and they'd applied for that in the first place, would we have given consent for it? I don't know, but certainly if it had come here, I think we'd have argued against that. But maybe then, but looking at it on the overall thing, I will go for the approval, but I really do have concerns about the waste, storage and collection. So I'll be interested to hear what other officers have got, other members have got to say. Sorry, officers.
Councillor Makinson.
Hi. There was talk of a shopfront design guide for Ramsgate, and I don't know what happened to it. And we need one desperately. The most positive thing I can say about that shopfront is it hasn't got a bright red roller shutter in front of it. So yeah, I would like to find out how we do get a design guide. There was one kicking around from the town team, wasn't there? And I can tell you what they do with their rubbish, because I walk down there every day. All these places without rubbish stores, they take a carrier bag and they push it into a street bin for the street cleaners, or they did put it at the bottom of Cavendish Street, but that's been cleared up now. Okay, thank you.
I'll just come back on a couple of points. So first of all, in terms of the waste storage, as you say, Councillor Albany, it was whilst the unit is vacant at the moment, it wasn't always, and therefore that's where the waste was stored. So in terms of a net increase that's occurring. What's been put in terms of offsetting the potential increase from the type of accommodation this is condition 5 that's on the approval is to get macerators to be put into sinks to try and deal with food waste specifically. So this is something that we used to deal with quite a lot when it comes to town centre flat developments, because in this instance, as you say, there's no rear access, there's no collection point to the rear, because we're talking about first floor, second floor, etc. So any waste collection would occur from the front. The idea, therefore, with the macerators is to reduce down the amount, and also you actually have a place outside that it can be stored when it is there. So I understand that there is going to be an issue on collection day, and clearly there is a broader issue about waste collection and enforcement in all of the town centres in the district. But this is actually an improvement on accommodation at this level because of what we've been able to condition to get in as part of this accommodation. To come back on Councillor Makinson's point with regards to shopfront guidelines or guidance, so there is some work that was being done as part of the Ramsgate has and subsequently has been done. So that is still going to be a document that's going to go through adoption process, but it's going to be for Thanet as a whole, as a shopfront guide. There is a shopfront design guide. It's from 1988 and is not therefore quite as relevant as maybe it once was. But there is going to be one, and it will be adopted. I believe it's going to be included in probably the local development scheme, and it's going to come through. There was a consultation that occurred relatively recently on it, but it's still in existence, and it will be coming in soon.
Councillor Alban.
Yeah, just a point, just come back on what Mr Livingston has said about the macerator. You can't macerate plastic and other recycling. So obviously that's something that we should be encouraging on any development. So I still have my concerns about this. Thank you.
Councillor Wing.
Deeply disappointed by the ignoring of the Conservation Officer's advice. I had my own experience through planning and wasn't allowed to do certain things. And that's quite right, because if you live in a conservation area, you've got a shop in a conservation area, you should abide by some basic rules of fitting in with the heritage. It's slap back in, it's right in the middle of town. I have huge issues with where is the waste going to go on the day it's put out. We already have a massive problem up parts of King Street on a daily basis that are not being managed well. Maybe the place is going to be run by a management company so that they can ensure the waste goes out and comes back in. I try and do that with my own waste. I try and put it out in the morning just before the guys come, and then I get my stuff straight back in so that it doesn't create a blight for everybody else. I just a rubbish bag dumped there right in the heart of it, possibly with seagulls pulling stuff out, not being managed correctly, is an absolute disaster for our town centre. And I won't be approving it, because until somebody tells me that's going to be managed or dealt with, then I don't want to inflict that on the residents of Ramsgate, and in particular the businesses surrounding that property that have been struggling all this time. And the front, it might look tidier, it's certainly better than it was before, but if you take the whole picture of the whole building, it's just totally and utterly out of keeping with the rest of the building. So it's deeply disappointing, and I hope that we learn a lesson and we listen to the Conservation Officer next time. Thank you.
Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. The waste collection is an issue, and it's got to be addressed in some way. However, I think it's pity, because I think generally this is very good use of all the building space. As Councillor Alban pointed out, the units, 2 of them are en suite. I feel there is a great need for HMOs, because I think the nature of them has changed enormously. I think we have professional people that want to, single professional people that want to work in the area and need affordable accommodation. Personally, I think the shopfront is subjective. I don't have a problem with it. I feel it's neat and clean. Yes, it is more modern than a lot of the surrounding properties, but if the waste collection can be resolved, I feel it's a very good application. Thank you.
Councillor Orban.
Yeah, could I when it comes to the decision that we take, could I ask that in relation to the condition relating to the plan for refuse storage, could that include that each occupant has, wherever it's going to be stored on that first floor, that they have a seagull-proof bag? Can we put that in a condition?
So we'd put an informative on any application like this, which would basically identify that you need to contact the waste and recycling team, the waste and refuse team, about, you know, getting bins for a development, and they would advise on the type of bin, and in this location that is what would be required. As for whether or not it's reasonable to require a specific type of product, I'd be a bit worried about putting something on, because it would be requirement anyway for it. I think the main thing about the waste, and I absolutely agree in terms of the potential for it to be a problem, is that in this instance this is actually quite rare that there's actually space, not at the front, to have storage for the week except for collection day, and therefore the impact is very minimal on that. We would certainly add an informative on specifically with regards to the site. I would suggest, though, it would be an informative rather than a condition stating the expectation that it would be a seagull-proof, sort of the bags that you can get, obviously, on that. I mean, you may be able to advise, Councillor Orban, given your role slightly.
Yeah, I will certainly do that as a cabinet member for waste and recycling to ensure that places like this get the prize. So if they decide to contact our waste and recycling for advice, because it's an advisory, it's not you must, it's an advisory. So I will certainly bring that to the attention of the head of service. Thank you very much.
Councillor Matterface.
My question is very quick. It does say in the report there's a shared outside amenity area. I just wondered, we didn't see any pictures of that, whether that's big enough for people to hang washing out or what, or the waste, I don't know.
Sorry, this is the amenity area it served the flat, and it's at first floor level. It's first floor level, and that's where the bin storage will also be.
They have no other outside space at all?
No.
That's just classed as amenity, that bit there, right next door to number 12? It's not much of amenity space for 5 flats, is it?
No, but it's
what's
perhaps
there.
more than you might find in an upper town
True,
centre
and
location.
it's what's there. And that's the door from the first floor out onto that. There's going to be some sort of railing to stop people. It's just kind of boarding, isn't it? Decking. Is that what, decking? Thank you. Well, it was always right. It's more like a patio then.
I've got Councillor Wing next then, please.
I mean, going back to rubbish again, aren't we? So for me, I think the storage inside is fine. I think macerate is a complete disaster because they get blocked. People put the wrong stuff down, and macerating toilets are a disaster. For me, it's what are we going to do to ensure the seagull bag is out and the seagull bag is in? Because we know we have too many places in the centre of town where seagull bags are just left out, never mind on our streets where you've got quite a few. So for me, is there any way there'll obviously be a management company, is there any way there can be a condition forcing the management company to address this issue? Because otherwise I'm going to be on them every week.
I'm afraid you're going to have to be on them every week. The point here is that we can facilitate through the provision of storage spaces through planning. The problem is we can't mandate behaviour of individuals. It's similar to issues to do with parking. We try and ensure we have spaces and therefore we have yellow lines, but obviously that doesn't stop people parking on yellow lines. And in the same way, if people leave their bins out, that's not something that planning can do anything about. It is about how you enforce it after the fact, I'm afraid.
Just before I bring in the next speaker, can I just add something to that? Can we look back at the picture, please? Because we have the front of the property.
Sorry, the
new frontage.
The actual elevation or the photograph?
The photograph. I just want to pick up where Councillor Wing has been going, because on collection day we're going to have 5 seagull-proof bags and 5 recycling boxes or bags out in that space, and I'm not at all sure where they're going to go other than blocking the windows of the shop.
So in terms of the requirement, so it's really important to note we've got 4-bed unit at the moment. 5-bed unit doesn't necessarily mean that there are going to be 5 separate bins. There's communal space inside as well. So this isn't 5 flats. This is 5 individuals. And again, I appreciate that you might have a family that doesn't quite generate as much waste as individuals. But again, in terms of, it will not result in that. I can say that confidently. I will expect the pictures if I'm wrong.
I've got Councillor Bright next, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, my question was going to be exactly the same as yours. I was wondering, would there be a bin per resident? But I guess, there are 2 kitchens there. Who decides how many bins an HMO has? Is that waste and recycling? And also, so it'll come to you eventually. And is it a reason for refusing this? Thank you.
No, in the sense of there's space on the site for where they'll be stored for normal, throughout the week. If there is no provision for bin storage on a site or in a building, then that could result in a reason for refusal, because if there is no space provided, the expectation is it's going on the road and therefore it's there continuously, and that is an amenity harm. In this instance, with, I'm going to say, normal behaviour, it would go out on bin collection day, and then it comes, whatever the bags are, come back in, and therefore that is not going to result in an amenity harm on those assumptions, which are the assumptions that we should reasonably be taking in terms of the decision. So
are we able to? So we would be able to approve it with the condition that the bins are stored in that outside space?
Yes, so it's the actual requirement is that the space is provided and made available prior to occupation, specifically to, again, we can't mandate behaviour. It's simply not going to be enforceable for us to be checking that individuals are putting the bins where they should, but it's to facilitate, it's to provide the space to make sure that behaviour is likely to be required.
Councillor Makinson.
I live in the High Street, opposite a whole row of HMOs, though I don't think they're legitimate but I do what you said you were going to do. I go out and shout at them. They haven't all got seagull bags. If they leave their seagull bags out, they get stolen, so they tend to take them back in. And I can even put pictures of dead rats through their letterbox if they're not taking their. No, because me. But it has solved the problem. But one of the problems is that they have a big turnover of residents who will all behave differently. So another thing I do is I find out who the landlord is and get onto the landlord and make sure that they get supplied with the seagull bags. You just have to do a bit of resident action. Yeah, okay.
Councillor Wing.
My colleague over there actually mentioned, and I was going to bring it up as well, although these are 1-bedroomed units, we cannot possibly stop somebody having a partner. So there could be up to 10 people living in these units. So we must remember that, that, you know, although we can say they're for one person, we cannot, under human rights, stop somebody having a partner.
So the condition that's on, and we've talked about this a few times, is it's five individuals it's their principal or main residence. So as you say, they could obviously have a partner that visits, but it's the principal residence aspect of things. And again, if there are issues with certain sites, we have had complaints about HMOs in terms of breaching that, and it is something that can be investigated. But you know, we are in a town centre location. We've looked at the issue of concentration of HMOs quite a few times at the committee, and it is. This is an area where we don't think that the concentration would result in a character and appearance issue because it's the town centre. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any other speakers, so we will now put the motion for the officer's recommendation for approval to the vote. Those in favour? And those against? Any abstentions? So that is carried. Thank you. So, moving on to the next item, agenda item 4C, 26 Ramsgate Road. Speaking under Council Rule 20.1, Councillor Kay Bright, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm going to be brief on this one. I called this in back in June, so I had to re-familiarise myself with the application, to which I am in balance opposed to. I'm yet to be convinced by HMOs within the bounds of Broadstairs. I don't believe they provide secure long-term housing to residents, and I think their aim is solely to maximise a landlord's return with minimal financial outline. I feel the area would be better served by 1 or 2 bedroom flats that provide much needing longer-term housing for individuals or for those who are cohabiting. Whilst I appreciate that what might happen or what has happened in the past should not impact onto today's discussion, it's a fact that HMOs often present nuisance challenges to neighbours. I know that's already been spoken about in the last application about high churn of residents. I have concerns also with the safety of this development, and I'd like the committee to review the evacuation procedures in the event of a ground or lower ground floor fire. Aside from the main or rear entrance exit, I couldn't identify the fire escapes for first, seconds or loft space residents. My chief concern, however, is the strain placed on parking within the vicinity. There's only room for 1 or 2 vehicles within the grounds of the HMO, but that's before waste storage provision has been taken into account. I can't think of a worse place in Broadstairs to try to accommodate an extra 9 cars or vans, and that's before we even consider the fact that, as has already been discussed tonight, that people will inevitably have partners staying or living with them. The applicant did carry out a parking survey which identified the following: that Ramsgate Road itself has double yellow lines throughout, meaning that this property will have no on-street parking provision directly nearby. Nearby streets, the Vale and Granville Road, are also heavily restricted, pretty much all double yellow lines, with little to no on-street parking provision. The parking survey did contend that there was adequate parking on Westcliff Road and on Yarrow Close, but as ward councillor, knowing these roads well enough, I'd contend that a survey carried out in December will have little bearing on the availability of parking throughout the spring and summer months. I've been there many times, I'm sure many of you have, and you cannot find a parking space around there. To have up to 9 new vehicles fighting for already limited space will quite simply mean that for the HMO residents and for neighbours alike, this is going to be a huge cause of grief as they hunt for a parking space. I feel that a few self-contained units are far more appropriate to the location, and ask the committee to consider this proposal, and that you ask this particular applicant to think again. Thank you.
Thank you. The Principal Planning Officer will now outline the report.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. This is the application site outlined in red. And this is the application site, as you can see here. It's on Ramsgate Road and Westcliff Road running off here. So it is in a pretty prominent location. So this is the front elevation of the application property. And to the right, we have number 28, and this is number 24, sort of angling away to the left, sorry, to the right of the slide. So you can see this photograph is actually taken from Westcliff Road, so you can see the free properties. You can see it is quite a substantial building, and it was in use previously as a single dwelling, so it would have been a large family home previously. So this is looking up Ramsgate Road. The red car you can see is in the drive of number 24. And this is looking back the other way. Sorry, sorry, I'm going backward, apologies. Sorry, this is looking back past number 28 and the houses going up along Ramsgate Road that way. And this is a view by the stop sign looking from Westcliff Road, so you get an idea of it is quite a prominent angle property, and even seen from Westcliff Road. And this is just a photograph. You've seen it was a slightly triangular end to the garden here, so this is standing in that triangle within the garden of the site. So, as has been set out in the report, there are no actual external changes to the building proposed as part of this application, so we don't have any elevations to show you because they remain as they are now. But we will look at, excuse me, the existing floor plans and proposed floor plans. So this is the existing lower floor plan, because as we've seen, you've got steps up to what's the ground floor of the application site. So that's the garden area, and that photograph we just saw was taken from that sort of triangular bit there. So you do have bin storage currently in here, and there are a couple of vehicles that park at the front here, but currently you have a kitchen, a bedroom on the lower ground level. Moving up to the ground floor as existing, there's a dining room and living room and a bedroom. The first floor has 3 bedrooms. The second floor also has 3 bedrooms currently, and then we have a bedroom within the roof and voids either side. So this is the proposed lower floor. So it would be a kitchen and a living room at ground floor and a utility room. Cycle parking is proposed here for 9 bicycles, and it will be covered and secure parking. There is provision for the bin storage, that's quite a key component, would be located here, and there would be a single parking space available on site there. Moving up, you have another kitchen, dining room, and you have 2 bedrooms here. Then you have more bedrooms in the similar, it's the layout of the first and second floor pretty much stay the same, so you have 3 bedrooms again. And then you have 3 bedrooms again on that second floor as they are now. And there is, and there is a room within the roof as well. Sorry, bear with me. So concerns have been raised in relation to the lack of off-street parking. And as we've seen, that you can accommodate a vehicle on the lower ground floor for parking. A parking survey was requested by KCC Highways because it wasn't initially supported by any parking information when the application came in. The survey was initially carried out by the applicants in October 2023, but KCC Highways, after reviewing it, raised some concerns, which included that they had only looked at a couple of times of day for the actual survey, and the methodology they used wasn't the correct methodology, and they'd slightly assumed a car space would be 5 metres when it should be 6 metres for KCC to have a balance of smaller and larger cars to be accommodated. So an actual further survey was done in December following the guidance from KCC, and this was reviewed by KCC Highways, and they advised that this second survey is satisfactory, and it demonstrates that demand for parking from the development could be accommodated in the surrounding area. And as has been mentioned, it is a large family home in any case, which had a large number of bedrooms, so there could have been significant vehicles associated with it as a single family unit. So we are considering that parking can be accommodated in surrounding roads. It may not be directly outside the property, but it can be accommodated in surrounding roads. So it is considered that the principle of a HMO in this location is acceptable. There are no other HMOs in close proximity. And it is recognised that it does provide, HMOs do provide a valuable source of accommodation for people who require that sort of accommodation. We consider it to be acceptable in terms of its character, neighbourhood and neighbour amenity, as no changes are made to the external parts of the building at all, and highways, given the parking survey that demonstrates that it can be, on-street parking can be accommodated. The proposed units have a good standard of space and sufficient daylight outlook and ventilation. So it is therefore recommended that the application subject to safeguarding conditions is approved. Sorry, just one more point was mentioned about the fire escape. There isn't no requirement for a fire escape under planning. That is dealt with by separate legislation. Under the HMO licensing, there is a requirement for a document to be submitted to them to deal with it under that. But also, again, it would have been the same situation if this was a large family home. We wouldn't normally expect it to have a fire escape situated there. It would have to have had other means to ensure that fire safety, and there are several accesses that people can get out of the building from by various routes from within it, but it would be controlled under separate legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Would the Vice Chair please second?
Seconded.
Thank you. I have Councillor Rattigan first, please.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the application, I agree with the officer. There's no sort of changes to the exterior of the building. It was a large family home. You know, if you had a couple of teenage children, you could have had, you know, multiple cars. While there is a need for HMOs, you know, this is sort of perhaps will attract a different sort of clientele in regards to, you know, perhaps working, you know, sort of people. So, you know, I would go with the officer's decision.
Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree. I don't think that HMOs are ever intended to provide long-term or permanent accommodation, but are very necessary type of accommodation for a certain range of people. My daughter lives in the area. She has a car, and yes, sometimes it's quite difficult to find parking spaces, but she always does. There is no reason to think that every person in the building is going to have a car anyway, and as Councillor Rattigan's pointed out, it could be that there were several cars within the family anyway. So I'm very happy to support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garner.
Thank you. I'm going to slightly disagree with my colleagues, because I find KCC Highways' happiness with this unsatisfactory. I'm not happy that they're happy. They haven't, I don't believe, they have looked at this in as much detail as they should have done. It's blatantly obvious to me, and to anybody else I would say, that the situation with parking in that area is totally different in the summer than it is in October. As Councillor Bright, and I'm sure others would attest to, this area becomes completely congested. I accept that was a large house. There might have been more than a couple of people. Older children might have had cars. There was 2 car parking spaces. There are now 1 out the front. I'll be interested to see how all the people who live in this with their car manage who takes what turn on what day to park in that one car parking space that they've got. And in all seriousness, I really, because this isn't the first time I haven't been happy with what KCC Highways have said, and I'm sure others of us have been unhappy with what they say on some other applications. And I really would, in all seriousness, like to ask that we request somebody from KCC Highways to come along, not necessarily to speak on particular application, but to at least come along and tell us how they go through producing these reports, and give us an opportunity to question them about the process they take, so that we can satisfy ourselves a bit better that we're happier with the approvals that they give to some of these applications. Thank you.
Councillor Wing.
I mean, I don't know how many HMOs are in Broadstairs, but we're definitely seeing a massive increase, I think, in Ramsgate. And there is a reason they've been stopped in Cliftonville and Margate. And at what point do we reach a tipping point, specifically in Ramsgate, and now it looks like in Broadstairs? I agree there is a need for this type of accommodation, but, you know, this type of accommodation I would hope will be a bit better of a standard than this one here. I think on 2 of the floors there's 1 bedroom shared by 3 bedrooms. That could be up to 6 people. One bathroom shared by 3 bedrooms, and these are adults. I come from a family of 6. We all shared 1 bathroom. I walked on my dad several times on the toilet, but that's okay. It's a family situation. It would be nice, given the size of the rooms, that there could be at least be maybe a reduction in the rooms, and offer some en-suite facilities for people. These are adults that are not related, are unlikely to be related to each other. So really my 2 concerns with HMOs is there's a definite reason why we've stopped them in Cliftonville and Margate, and are we seeing, particularly in Ramsgate now and now in Broadstairs, a push for more because they can't get in there? And the type of accommodation, the rooms are big enough, but I'd like to see, en-suite facilities in each of those bedrooms.
Councillor Makinson.
I agree with Councillor Bright. It's a bit of a shame that it's not flats, but having accepted that, I mean, it's like a good sort of solid house, but I can tell you the building regs and fire regs are going to be all over this, especially to that room in the roof with an open staircase going down. It will end up with a fire escape down the back. I can guarantee that. Yeah, it looks, if it's got to be that, it looks adequate. So I will support it, but I will leave it to others to sort out the details of that.
The Planning Applications Manager wants to come back, but I am going to answer Councillor Garner's comment. I used to live just down the road from there, and Dickens Week in particular, it's a half-a-mile walk every night to get a parking space. So it is, the time of year is crucial. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just to pick up the point again, to reiterate what Annabelle's already said, there's a requirement under this. This will be a property that will require an HMO licence, and our private sector housing team write in those licences that not only is a landlord for an HMO required under the fire regulatory reform order to have their own plan, but actually the requirement here is that plan is actually provided to the private sector housing team, and that's written into every licence that's issued. In terms of the parking, I agree. There's certainly fluctuations depending on the time of year, and there are. And this is a location that has the parking restrictions, as Councillor Bright's mentioned, on the front on Ramsgate Road. The survey showed actually a relatively large capacity for parking, particularly within a 200-metre radius. So there is inconvenience in the sense of having to walk to find a space, but there is capacity, quite a lot of capacity. And I think highways, to your point, Councillor Garner, I don't think highways are happy, just to be clear. They haven't raised an objection, and I think that's the difference here, is that with the parking survey work that's been done, admittedly at a particular time of year, they've shown that there's more than enough capacity for, even if every single person in this property had a vehicle. I absolutely agree that during different times of year, it would be more difficult to find a car parking space, but you have to take about looking at the overall year and whether or not actually the impact is going to be so severe on parking amenity from the use of this building that it warrants refusal. And highways may be more averse to raising objections on this type of property because of that. And I will take back your comment on subjecting a highways officer to discussion.
The HMO licensing thing, and we do have an HMO officer who I've found really useful when we've had properties that we didn't think had licences. But I do remember when I was first elected, there was, I think it was in Broadstairs or the Ramsgate Broadstairs border, where we had a HMO that we'd given planning permission for, and the HMO became occupied before they'd applied for a licence. And that really does worry me here, because it is an open staircase, so there would have to be a fire would just go straight up the middle of that building. Is there a stipulation that they must apply and achieve that HMO licence before that house can be occupied?
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, it's effectively, if you're you're in breach of another bit of legislation, basically. I must admit, I'm not overly familiar with that enforcement protocol and what they can and can't do in private sector housing. I mean, the thing when obviously members are seeing applications like this is that there's knowledge of it. They've been notified. They've given us the comment on, is there one registered in the vicinity? So they're aware of it, and the manager of that team is incredibly efficient and will have logged this down and will be pursuing it if it does start without the licence. But yeah.
So make a request that maybe when we get some planning training, that we also get some training on. We've got an empty property officer. We've got HMO team who are very good, and we've also got a private property officer. And it would be really useful if people got a bit more information on what those teams do and how we could utilise them.
We'll look at a way of covering that. It may be through planning training, or it may be through members' briefing, but we'll take that away. Sorry, Councillor Matterface, did you want to...
I just wanted to say it's not just Dickens Week or Folk Week. There's what was Thanet College, Broadstairs College, within a couple of 100 metres, and that, because of the courses they're on, puts enormous pressure on Luton Avenue and Swinburne Avenue, which are a couple of behind. A lot of the roads down have dropped, towards the sea, have dropped curbs, so you can't park there. You can't park up the Vale. I mean, I know in town centres you don't have to provide parking, but people being people tend to have cars. I'm concerned about the parking for a property like that. I'm also concerned, as I said, about the fire risk, but I take on board what you say about HMO licensing. So I think the parking is a bit of a problem.
Councillor Alban. Councillor Alban.
Yeah, just an observation, Chair, really. I wasn't going to say anything on this application, but I couldn't help myself. Comments from Broadstairs Town Council. No objection with concerns. Comments from Highways and Waste and Recycling need to be addressed, which they have. So I think that's quite... Broadstairs Town Council have got no concerns on this.
Councillor Bright.
No, I disagree. Actually, no, we have. I think Mike's made Councillor Garner's made that clear. I think we felt that the parking survey was inadequate. It wasn't conducted in the right time. It's not acknowledging the fact that actually it is really difficult to find parking. Thank you.
Can I ask a question regarding the parking? Is this location within or outside of the town boundary for parking regulations?
No, it's not in the town centre parking area. So there is a requirement to try and provide on-street parking, off-street parking, which obviously in this instance is physically restricted on the site, which is why they're only providing 2. So it is, as mentioned, it's on a bus route. It's not adjacent to the boundary of no parking in the town centre.
Okay, do I have any other? Councillor Garner.
Sorry to drag it out, but there is one other thing I did notice it's the sort of the layout of the house from bottom to top. There seems to be a hierarchy type layout. You've got the communal areas at the bottom in the basement for everybody. The only communal areas, I believe, are at the bottom. On the ground floor, you do have 2, I think it is, rooms that have en suites. So if you get one of the rooms at the bottom, you're well set. You then go further up, and each of the rooms as you go up don't have any en suite. And I don't remember what exactly was in the roof, but I guess it was a hammock or something. But I am a bit. I don't necessarily think that's a point, but it does seem a bit odd. Thank you.
Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, isn't this like any other housing? You pay for what you get, and some people want very cheap housing, so they probably, yes, exactly. So they don't go for the more expensive bits.
Councillor Wing.
Oh, I'd like to disagree. I mean, student accommodation nowadays is absolutely exceptional. Every student room would have its own ensuite, and very expensive as well.
I just want to come back on the standard of the accommodation. So this is a comment specifically that's been made by private sector housing, where they look at the size of the rooms and the number of shared kitchens in that space. I appreciate what's being said about what's the en-suites, but they've stated basically that with this building and the rooms that they've got, the maximum permitted occupancy would actually be 10 persons rather than what's been put forward in the HMO licensing side of things. This has provided a communal area. I appreciate it's on the lower basement, and there are obviously 2 kitchens that are provided as well. So in terms of actually a problem in planning sense with the standard accommodation, there wouldn't be anything that stands up to scrutiny, I'm afraid.
And would there be a toilet in the bathroom as well as the separate toilet?
I can't mandate it. I couldn't tell you, I'm afraid.
It's just not on there.
It's not on there.
There are separate toilets.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, but the bathroom doesn't indicate whether it's got a toilet in it or
The
not.
bathroom would have a toilet. It'd be a normal bathroom, but there are separate WCs on the upper floors as well.
Thank you. I've come across places where that doesn't happen.
Oh,
So.
right. I think that is a requirement, again, of the HMO licensing.
Okay, do I have any more contributions? No, good. Sorry. We will now put the motion for the officer's recommendation for approval to the vote. Can I have those in favour, please? And those against? And abstentions? That is carried. And that now concludes the public speaking for this meeting. I will call upon the clerk to read out the remaining planning applications. If a member wishes to reserve an application, will they please call out as the clerk reads?
Thank you, Chair. We've got AO4, Kennedy House and Trove Court, Newcastle Hill, Ramsgate. AO5, Harbour Towers, Hertford Street, Ramsgate. AO6, Theatre Royal, Addington Street, Margate. AO7, 91, Stena Court, Manston Road, Ramsgate.
Thank you. Can I have a proposer to move that the applications that have not been reserved be determined in accordance with the officer recommendation? Councillor Bayford, and seconded, I got Councillor Rattigan. Do members agree? Thank you. For the benefit of the public, don't go yet. I will call upon the clerk to read out the applications that have been determined.
Thank you, Chair, again. AO4, Kennedy House and Trove Court, Newcastle Hill, Ramsgate. AO5, Harbour Towers, Hertford Street, Ramsgate, AO6, Theatre Royal, Addington Street, Margate, and AO7, 91 Stennercourt, Manston Road, Ramsgate.
Thank you. This concludes the business for this meeting. Thank you for your attendance and good night. See you next time.